Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Dogmas, Philosophies, and Traditions of Men. And pretty much this lesson comes to the inspiration of a video I was watching last night on RTD, Mike on RTD or Rethink the Dollar. And he had this individual on there that was speaking about, because they were all talking about the pre-tribulation, the rapture, and all that stuff, all that BS that these so-called Christians bring out. And don't get me wrong, I like Mike. I think Mike is a sincere brother. He's an Israelite, definitely an Israelite. I believe he's really sincere, but he's just trying to be nice with everybody, and he doesn't really understand what's really going on. He got part of what's going on, right? But the spiritual aspect, he really hasn't fully got it locked in. And if he's part of the elect, eventually he'll get it. But he had this caller on. I was watching it last night. He had this caller on, and the caller, like I said, they were talking about pre-tribulation and rapture and all of that stuff. And the caller made a mention of this individual, John Nelson Darby, and he mentioned a group that they had started. He mentioned a particular Bible that they were using, and pretty much that prompted me to do a little research on this individual, which we're going to get into, because sure enough, when you go back to the origins of a lot of these different dogmas, these different philosophies, things that we hear about now, it goes back to some individual, that came up with some concoction, and everybody pretty much used it as a staple, and it became a tradition. Now, the name of the lesson is Dogmas, Prophecies, and Traditions. So what I did was I looked up the term dogma, and it says a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true. So in other words, there's individuals that have laid down certain laws, and they're pretty much saying that they're true, and that's it. Like such as the Roman Catholic Church and many others. So we go on to the next one, philosophy. It says the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence, especially when considered as an academic discipline. I want to just go to this one here. It says the study of the theoretical basis of a particular branch of knowledge or experience, and that's pretty much what it is. It's different philosophies, different sciences, compacted together, using the scriptures, as a, and then, they ultimately say that they're the authority on that. And pretty much what happens is it carries on through tradition, which leads us to the next word, tradition, which is the transmission of customs or beliefs from generation to generation, or the fact of being passed on in this way. All right, so that's what a tradition is, something that was done and it was passed on from one generation to the next generation to the next generation, all the way up until the present. The present teaching goes back to the same traditions. So this individual, John Nelson Darby, born November 1800, died 1882. So obviously he was 82 years old when he died, or so. Was an Anglo-Irish Bible teacher, one of the influential figures among the original Plymouth Brethren. So this is the name of the group of individuals, and the founder of the exclusive Brethren. And these are some of the individuals that kept this tradition going. He is considered to be the father of modern dispensationalism and futurism, pre-tribulation rapture theology. So it says pre-tribulation rapture theology was popularized extensively in the 1830s by John Nelson Darby and the Plymouth Brethren. So this individual is the one that's credited with being the father of these different theologies. One of them being a tribulation and rapture theology, which is a theology is a study of a theory. It's not fact, it's a theory. And it was made popular where? In the 1830s, and further popularized in the United States in the early 20th century by the wide circulation of the Scofield Reference Bible. And this is the Bible that he was speaking about. Now, what you hear these so-called Christians teaching today about the pre-tribulation goes back to this individual and that particular group. So what it is just a repetition of somebody's theory that they kept pushing, and it became a part of the dogma, philosophy, tradition of the so-called quote-unquote Christian church. And that's what it goes back to. Now, I wanted to well, you know what? No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it through the Spirit. Now, when you look up, because the scripture that these so-called Christians use for this rapture, pre-tribulation, so on and so forth, because the rapture is the believers of the church being taken up into a cloud, which they got that from the scriptures, and then the ones that don't believe left here for a 7-year period to go through 7-year tribulation, and be destroyed or something along those lines, which once the destruction comes, that's it. It ain't going to be no pre-tribulation period where all of a sudden somebody's there in front of you and all of a sudden you see nothing but clothes and the person disappeared because they were raptured up into space. Now the elect will be beamed up into the chariots, don't get me wrong, but all of the destruction and everything and the deliverance is all going to be done at the same time. All right, which leads us to the word rapture. It says, well, you know what? Before I read that, and this theory of the pre-tribulation, what they try to use is the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter, which Lord's will, we're going to go through that. And that's the reason why they use it. And they use the 7 years because it's the 7 last week, or the 7th week, that the final 7th week in the book of Daniel 9, which they don't understand that at all. All right, so we look up the word rapture. It says circa 1600, act of carrying off as prey or plunder, from rapt plus ur, or else from French rapture, from medieval Latin raptura, seizure, rape, kidnapping, the Latin raptus. Because when you whisk somebody away or you hold them against their will, that's rape. Rape has nothing to do with sex. And this is a misnomer in this society. When you use the word rape, it's talking about having sex. No, the word rape means that you hold somebody against their will. All right, and that's what the word rapture means. All right, a carrying off, abduction, snatching away, rape. All pretty much the same thing. Which that's going to happen when Yahushua comes, as we read in many different parts of the scriptures. One of them being 1 Thessalonians 4, where the Lord is going to beam up the elect into the chariots, but that's going to happen simultaneously with the missiles and the destruction happening. It's not going to be the elect going up, and it's not going to be the believers of the church. It's going to be the elect of the nation of Israel. And then once they're beamed up, then everybody else on earth is going through a 7-year period of a hard tribulation. No, that's dogma, which was started by this individual, John Nelson Darby, and the Plymouth Brethren boys, all right, which they were also called Plymouth Brethren. All right, now when we read Daniel 9, where they got that from, which we're going to read this, it speaks about 70 weeks and the Messiah. One thing I noticed when I just wanted to look at the, at some of the commentary that was done, just to see what they would say. And what I did was I looked up the commentary of Matthew Henry. All right. Now, Matthew Henry, right, it says, was a nonconformist minister and author who was born in Wales but spent much of his life in England. He is best known for the 6-volume biblical commentary exposition of the Old and New Testament, which you can find within the Blue Letter Bible, they actually show you, some of his they actually show you his commentaries. You can actually click on them, which this is one of them right here. All right, this is the one on Daniel's the 9th chapter, and you can see here. I don't know if you can see it well. It says Matthew Henry. All right, so let me just scroll back where I was at. Now, when you read through this commentary, and what I did was I try to find anywhere where it says tribulation, pre-tribulation, anything of that nature. You're not going to find it anywhere in here. He does not speak about the pre-tribulation. Why? Because the pre-tribulation, this was compiled in Henry's well-known 6-volume exposition of the Old and New Testament, 1708 through 1710. Or complete commentary provides an exhaustive verse-by-verse study of the Bible. And nowhere within that Daniel, the 9th chapter, does it speak about any pre-tribulation period, 7 years, people catching hell. He actually breaks it down correctly to a certain degree. Now, I didn't read the whole commentary because it's long and wordy, but there was no point in there, because I searched, there was no point in there where it said tribulation or pre-tribulation. And the reason why, because this is 1708 to 1710, and this pre-tribulation tradition, dogma, philosophy was spread. It was popularized where? In the 1830s. This is more than 100 years after this particular commentary of Matthew Henry. And I just wanted to point that out. And I'm pretty sure there's others, but I just wanted to point that out because I'm saying, okay, well, if this is a church tradition, Matthew Henry, that's why the Spirit had me do the research and found out that he was actually before this guy. So he has to mention it somewhere if there's a such thing as pre-tribulation. All right. So let's go into Daniel 9 and 24. It says 70 weeks and the Messiah. It says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Now, what is 70 weeks? 70 weeks, a week is what? 7 days, right? But prophetically, it goes into weeks. It goes into years. If you want to get an understanding on that, read about Jacob, when he was dealing with Rachel and Leah, Rachel and Leah, and how he served for 7 years, and it was called a week. So these 70 weeks is 70 times 7 years, which when you add up 70 times 7 is what? 490 or 490 years, right? Now, keep in mind that when Esau puts together these commentaries or tries to go into the scriptures and give reason on the scriptures, they try to break everything down to the last date, day, minute, hour, second, and that is possible if we had the right time frame. But we don't have the right time frame because everything has been changed. Everything is upside down. Which, before we get into that, I got a series of scriptures I want to get into real quick to prove that point. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25. And this is speaking about the beast, which is dealing with the part of the beast dealing with America. When America is in power, it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High. And they did. And that when they came over here, they took over the lands of Gad and the other tribes and wore them out. They brought Judah, Benjamin, and Levi over here, wore them out, and think to change what? Change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until the time and the dividing of times. So the concept of time is off, going all the way back, but especially now where everything is off. When we look at the word change, right? We look up the word change, and the word change is the word shanah, which is to change, be altered, be changed. So they altered times. When you go back to the origins of the Julian calendar, his calendar was off. They had 8 days. Then another time they were following the Egyptians, which they had a 10-day calendar. Then eventually they got to the 7-day calendar, the 365 days, and you had the leap year. So time is all fucked up. So if you try to calculate these different prophecies to the letter, as far as number of years and days and all that, you're not gonna. It's not gonna add up because everything is off. So he's to change, be altered, be changed. Go back. It says times, which goes to the word zaman, which the word zaman means a set time, season. So the times are off. They're altered. You know, you can't fully rely on it. That's why everything is off now. You know, you try to, even trying to put the calendars together is a task, because shit is off. Isaiah 24:4, the earth mourneth and fadeth away. It's fading because of the inhabitants. The world languisheth and fadeth away because of the inhabitants. The haughty people, Esau, of the earth do languish. It says, the earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. So they've destroyed everything. So nothing is really running as it should. Now let's go from there to Job, chapter 17, and verse 12. They changed the night into day. The light is shortened because of darkness. So their whole shit is off. Everything is off. And the last one I have on that is Psalms 82 and 5. It says, they know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. So everything is out of course. So you cannot try to take something that's off course or altered or messed up and try to fit prophecy into every little date or detail. And that's what Esau likes to do. All right, so going back to Daniel 9, it says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. So this 490 years, right, is determined upon the people Israel and the holy city, to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, which reconciliation is to be brought back into the good graces, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, which came through who? Through Yahushai. And to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So this vision and this prophecy was sealed at a certain point. And like I said, when you read through the commentary of Matthew Henry, he does not speak about no pre-tribulation, rapture, thing happening. I searched. I mean, I didn't read the whole thing, but I searched. You could use the search. I put in pre-tribulation. I put in tribulation. None of that comes up. All right. It says, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore. See, because what happened? The Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple. So there was a decree given to where the temple was about to be restored back. It started with Cyrus. The heathens came in and disrupted it. They went to the king and brought false accusations against us. Told him, to stop the building, which they gave a decree to stop the building. And then eventually, during the time of Darius, I believe it was, the temple was began to be go back into construction again. So there was a time period there, that happened. All right. It says, so to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, which altogether the 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Let's see. Let's do some addition here. All right. So 7 and 62 weeks. That's 62 weeks, right? That's 7. That's 9. 69 weeks. So we're looking at 69 weeks. 69 times 7. This is 42, 45. That's 13, 18, right? No, my bad. I messed that up. I messed that up. So that's 69. 7 times 2. I mean 7 times 6 is what is that? 42. 49. Hold on. Salaki brothers. All right, 483. No, because it's 7 times 9. 7 times 9 is 63. And then 7 times 6 is 42 plus this. All right, so 483 years. Right? And then if you add 7 more years to the 483, that would be the 490 years. All right, so from the going forth of the, let's read that again. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, which is Yahushai, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. So by the time Yahushai came on the scene, there had been 483 years, that would have passed in prophecy, if we can calculate it to the time. Okay? So it says the street shall be built again and the wall even in troublous times, because back then when they were building the second temple, the heathens were there. Because when Jerusalem was built during the time of Herod, they didn't have a hard time building a temple because he was under the orders of the Romans. But when you go back to the time of the Medo-Persian Empire, the other nations were giving us hell. Read the book of Ezra, read the book of Nehemiah. They was catching hell back then, trying to build the wall. That's why it said that they would have to have one instrument for working in one hand and the weapon on the other hand. So when the heathen will come, you will have to drop the working utensil, so to speak, and pick up your weapon and fight. All right. So it says, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. And that's what happened. During the time when Yahushua came on the scene, this is what happened. The Romans were in rulership. Israel was under captivity under the Romans. There was a 3-year period where Yahushua was teaching the ministry, and the heads, of Jerusalem, which they call the Sanhedrin, they delivered him over to the Romans to be crucified. So after that period, the 62 weeks, that's when Yahushua was crucified. Right? It says, but not for himself and the people of the prince. So not for himself. Why? Because he gave up his life for our iniquities, for the iniquities of the nation of Israel. And we could read all throughout the scriptures. You could read about that. It says, and the people of the prince that shall come. What the hell? Oh, let me go back. Where are we at? Street shall be built again. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and sanctuary. So who are these people of the prince that shall come to destroy the city and the sanctuary? That was dealing with the Romans. So after Yahushua died and went back to the Father, he had prophesied that these things were going to happen, which we're going to get into some of them precepts, Lord's will. So the Romans were the ones that came and destroyed Jerusalem. One key date is 70 AD, but it goes back before that because they weren't able to destroy the wall, or they weren't able to destroy Jerusalem in one day. There was a long siege that took place because, the cities were fortified. The city was fortified. And then you had Jake that was fighting against the Romans. So they had a hard way to go. So they had to lay a siege. They had to cut down trees. They had to do all different type of stuff, build, weapons of war to destroy Jerusalem. All right. It says, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So that goes back into what? Into the Roman military. All right. Now, before I read some of the other precepts, I want to go to this the Titus siege of Jerusalem. This is under Livius, and I put these two articles in the description box for those that want to look into it. It says his father's accession to the Roman throne left the war against the Jews to Titus. He was not a very experienced general, but his assistant was Tiberius Julius Alexander, who had been governor of Judea in 46 to 48, and he knew how to fight a war. Titus' own quality was that the new emperor, his father, could trust him. So notice they didn't mention that Tiberius was a Jake. Now it says on 14 April 70, during Passover, Titus laid siege to Jerusalem. To the northeast of the old city, on Mount Scopus, the Legion 12 Fulminata, this was one of the legions that came to fight. This is part of the flood that came. A new addition from Syria, and 15 Apollinaris shared a large camp. 5 Macedonica was camped at a short distance when 10 Frentensis arrived from Syria. It occupied the Mount of Olives in front of the temple. The soldiers of this legion had a special incentive to fight. They had been defeated by the Zealots in 66 and won a revenge. Auxiliaries had been sent by 2 petty kingdoms of the upper Euphrates, Commagene and Emesa, an Arab sheik. So you even had Arabs sieging Jerusalem back then, Ishmaelites, who felt a deep hatred for the Jews, had joined the Romans with his warriors. And from Italy arrived many adventurers, veterans from the defeated armies of Galba and Otho. The besieged did not stand a chance against this army. So it was a large conglomeration of armies of different legions, different armies coming together to help with this one thing, is to destroy Jerusalem. So now when we jump down here, we're going to jump right to this part here, but I want to show you this coin, which Elder Pastor speaks about it a lot. Coin, Judea Copter, shows you a Roman soldier and an Israelite woman, defeated. And that's what Judah or Judea Copter means. Jerusalem defeated or destroyed, right? Now when we go back, it says, on his return in Rome, Vespasian, Titus, and his soldiers celebrated a triumph. They paraded through the streets of their capital in a beautiful procession, which culminated in the punishment of the Jewish leaders. Simon, son of Gioria, was executed, and John Gishala was sentenced to life imprisonment. The sacred vessels, the table of which the bread of the Most High's presence had been put, the menorah, the curtain, and all other objects that nobody except the high priest was allowed to see, were carried through the Roman streets. And that's where you get the commemoration of the Ark of Titus. And you can see here, these are the Romans, this is the menorah, and they were carrying all the vessels, and parading it through the streets in commemoration of the destruction. They were also killing a lot of the Israelites. They were crucifying them, and a lot of these Israelites, a lot of those Jews, guess what? They made them become gladiators and fight in the gladiatorial arenas. You see? So it wasn't just the Christians, it was just Jake in general that they put into these arenas. So a lot of those different gladiators that you hear about were actually Jake, which we spoke about that before. It says the boundless riches from the temple treasury were used to strike coins with the legend Judea Copta, which we just saw, Judea defeated. Any Roman would be reminded of their emperor's victory. The Jews were forced to pay an additional tax, Fiscus Judaicus. During the 4 years of war, the Romans had taken 97,000 prisoners. Thousands of them were forced to become gladiators, and were killed in the arena, fighting wild animals or fellow gladiators. Some who were known as criminals were burned alive. Others were employed at Seleucia, where they had to dig a tunnel. But most of these prisoners were brought to Rome, where they were forced to build the Forum of Peace, a park in the heart of Rome, and the Colosseum. So the Colosseum was built by Jake. A lot of Jakes that were captive from 70 AD were forced to build this Colosseum and other buildings. The menorah and the table were exhibited in the Temple of Peace. In front of Rome's Jewish quarters, a triumphal arch was erected to honor Titus, which we just saw here, the Ark of Titus. And you can see other pictures of it. You'll see it from a distance, and you'll see, how it arches over. It says, another ark was built on the Forum Romanum, where it can still be seen. The first ark was destroyed in the Middle Ages. Its inscription, however, was copied by an anonymous monk from Einsiedeln, Switzerland, who visited Rome in the 8th century. Senate and people of Rome, to their princeps, Imperator Titus Caesar Vespianus Augustus, son of the divine Vespasian, high priest in the 10th year of his tribunal powers, 17-time imperator, 8-time consul, father of the fatherland, because he, on his father's orders and auspices and using his advice, subdued the Jewish people and destroyed the city of Jerusalem, something which none of the leaders, kings, and armies before him failed to do. And it's funny, because you have these black unconscious individuals that say that Israel never existed, yet all throughout different secular history, you find writings of Israel and things that they did and how they were captured or how they performed certain things or whatever the case may be. We show you that them dudes are straight up bugged out. But anyway, now that we got that out the way, right? And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So we had these 69 weeks, but not for himself. So by the time Yahushua was on the scene, that fulfilled the 69 weeks. Right? It says, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, which were the Romans. And we read about it. And the end thereof shall be with the flood, because there were many armies. And we read how you even had Ishmaelites that were fighting in these wars to take Jake down. Because there was look, the scriptures don't lie. When the scriptures speak about that all of these nations are confederate to destroy us, the scriptures don't lie. One of the people that it mentions in there, let's go real quick to that. Psalms 83. Right? It says, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites and Moab and the Hagarenes. So the Ishmaelites also were a part in this. And all of these different nations have always been our enemies every step of the way. That's why when you read the book of Judges, you see many different times when we went under captivity under different of those nations, whether it was 8 years or 18 years or 20 years or however many years. All right. So going back, it says, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Yeah, because there was 1 week left. 1 week was left out of the prophetic 70 weeks. Right? So Yahushua spoke about this great onslaught, this great slaughter, this great flood of Roman armies that were going to come to destroy Jerusalem. It began in 66 AD, and by the time 70 AD came, that was a period of about 3.5 years, which is the middle of that week. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Yeah. So by the time the middle of the week came, which was the 3.5 years, Jerusalem was taken down, but they were still getting Jake from different places until about 74 AD. You know? So that was the last and final week. So this was fulfilled at that time. Because when we read up above that, let's see. I believe it was the 24th verse. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy. So it's letting you know that once these things are accomplished, that's going to be the sealing or the ending of this thing. And to anoint the most holy, which is who? Yahushua. So this already took place. And like I said, when we read this commentary here of Matthew Henry, he does not mention anything about no pre-tribulation or rapture or anything like that, because that was something that was started by John Nelson Darby. It was popularized in the 1830s, and Matthew Henry himself wrote these volumes of commentaries of the Bible, both old and new, from 1708 to 1710. Just shows you that this was a dogma, a philosophy, a theology of man, and it's been pushed and been kept from that point all the way up until today. That's why when you see these wacky tacky Christians, when you hear them talking about the pre-tribulation and all that, it goes back to this. This was something that was concocted by the devil. All right. Now, in the commentary of Matthew Henry, it says, concerning the final destruction of Jerusalem and of the Jewish church and nation, which we read in Daniel 9, and this follows immediately upon the cutting off of the Messiah. Right. Not only because it was a just punishment of those to put him to death, which was a sin that filled up the measure of their iniquity and brought ruin upon them, but because as things were, it was necessary to the perfecting of one of the great intentions of his death, which was to bring salvation to the nation of Israel. He died to take away the ceremonial law, quite to abolish the law of commandments. Well, really, he died to take over our sins, because that was the purpose of him dying. You know, he did not do away with the law. You know, he did away with the sacrificial law. You know, not the ceremonial law, because the ceremonial law goes into, you know, the keeping of the high holy days, and we're still going to be keeping high holy days in the kingdom. He died to take away the ceremonial law, quite to abolish the law of the commandments. He did not abolish the law of the commandments, and to vacate the obligation of it, which he gave us grace. But the Jews would not be persuaded to quit it. Still, they kept it up with more zeal than ever. They would hear no talk of parting with it. They stoned Stephen, the first Christian martyr, for saying that Yahushua should change the customs which Moses delivered them. I want to jump down to this part here. All right, you know, if you get a chance, if you brothers that like to read, if you want to read this, I didn't put this in the description box. Just go to Blue Letter, go to Daniel 9 and type in commentaries, or go to commentaries and then go to Matthew Henry, you know, and you can read the whole thing if you desire. It says, it is here foretold that the people of the prince, which are the Romans, that shall come shall be the instruments of his destruction. That is the Roman armies. And that's exactly what it is. It says, belonging to a monarchy yet to come. Yahushua is the prince that shall come. That's right. And they are employed by him in this service. They are his armies. Right? It says, or the Gentiles who though now strangers shall become the people of the Messiah. No, that's talking about the Israelite foreigners. Shall destroy the Jews. That the destruction shall be by war. And that's exactly what happened. This prophecy here was a prophecy of a destruction that would come to the Israelites back then by reason of war. It says, and the end of that war shall be with this desolation determined. The wars of the Jews with the Romans were by their own obstinacy made very long and very bloody, and they issued at length in the utter extirpation of that people, that the city and sanctuary shall in particular manner be destroyed and laid quite waste. Titus, the Roman general, would fain have saved the temple, but his soldiers were so enraged against it, which is bullshit. He did not try to save the temple. You know, it says the Jews that he could not restrain them from burning it to the ground, that this prophecy might be fulfilled. And pretty much he took it down, because if he felt really sorry about that, he would have not had no commemorations for himself. That all the resistance that shall be made to this destruction shall be in vain. The end of it shall be with a flood. It shall be a deluge of destruction, that's exactly what happened. And the armies were that flood that caused this destruction, like that which swept away the old world, and which there will be no making head against. And the actual flood of the ancient world was actual water, but this flood were actual were actual soldiers. Let's go real quick to the book of Psalms 124. Let's try that again. Psalms 124 and 1. If it had not been the Lord who was on our side, now may Israel say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side, when men rose up against us, then they had swallowed us up quick, when their wrath was kindled against us. Then the waters had overwhelmed us, the stream had gone over our soul, then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Which is dealing with these Roman armies. But you could apply this to other captivities, and you could apply this to now. But the point is that these armies were those floods that came in. All right? It says that thereby the sacrifice and oblation shall be made to cease, and it must needs cease when the family of the priest was so extirpated, and the genealogies of it were so confounded that they say there is no man in the world that can prove himself of the seed of Aaron. Let me see what else we got. It says that there shall be an overspreading of abominations, a general corruption of the Jewish nation, and an abounding of iniquity among them, for which it shall be made desolate. Or it is rather to be understood of the armies of the Romans, which were abominable to the Jews, they could not endure them, which overspread the nation, and by which it was made desolate. For these are the words which Yahweh refers to in Matthew 24:15, which we're going to read. When you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel stand in the holy place, then let those who shall be in Judea flee, which is explained in Luke 21:20. Right? It says, when you shall see Jerusalem encompassed with armies, then flee. So he's letting you know what Daniel, the 9th chapter, is talking about. What those floods are talking about. When this was fulfilled and accomplished. It says that the destruction shall be total and final. And like I said, we're going to get to some precepts to go into all of this. Right? I'm just trying to check. Okay. Yep. All right. It says that the desolation shall be total and final. He shall make it desolate even until the consummation. That is, he shall make it completely desolate. It is a desolation determined, and it will be accomplished to the utmost. And when it is made desolate, it should seem there is something more determined that is to be poured upon the desolate, and that should be put to the spirit of slumber, and that blindness which has happened to Israel unto the fullness of the Gentiles come in, and then all Israel shall be saved. Which he doesn't really understand that. That's talking about all Israel anyway, which it explains it right there anyway. So what I want to do now is let's go from there. Let's go first. Let's go to the book of... I'm trying to think of which we should go to first. Let's go to Matthew 24 and 15. It says, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Yeah, that's when they entered into Jerusalem. Actually, when they were outside of the walls besieging it. And then they eventually entered into it. And that's why Yahweh said, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Why? Because this was the time that the Lord spoke of in the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter, that this would happen. This was going to bring the total desolation of Jerusalem and the temple. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, because there was great slaughter. And those Romans were not sparing anybody. It says, but pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Because there was some serious problems going on back then. And women that were either pregnant or had like young babies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, there was a great destruction that came upon them. And that's why we read in Luke. And see, when you read this history, then you start to understand why some of this stuff took place and what Yahweh meant by what he spoke of. Luke 19 and 41. It's because you got to understand that he saw all of this afar off. By the time he was about to be crucified, he knew that in a matter of 30 some odd years, there was going to be a time period where the Romans were going to come in and destroy everything and everyone within those parameters of that city. And those that can see, take heed to his words and fled, and those that could not see, they were caught up in there. All right. So it says, and when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it. Why? Because he saw the total onslaught. He saw the city laid waste. You know, he saw all the dead people, because they say that there were so many dead people, you know, that they were everywhere, all in the open parts of the city where the Romans had overtaken. It says, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, but now they are hid from thine eyes. And by the time this came to pass, some of these people were older, and they had children and children, and they had children, you know, and all these things came to pass at that time. For the days shall come upon thee, the days shall come upon thee, because it was not just one day, it wasn't a 1 day siege. The siege just to breach the walls and to finally take everything down was about 3.5 years, you know, which was in the midst of the week. That thine enemy shall cast a trench about thee and compass thee round about and keep thee in on every side, because there was a great siege that took place. And you can read about that siege in Deuteronomy the 28th chapter, which that happened in other captivities, but it also happened in the Roman Empire. It says, and shall lay thee even with the ground, and thy children within thee. That's why Yahweh said, woe to them that are with child in those days. And they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. Yeah, so they did not leave one stone upon another. Now, before, matter of fact, let me go to Matthew real quick, 24 and 1, because we just read in Luke, they said that they shall not leave in thee one stone upon another, because thou knewest not the time of thy visitation. So Matthew 24 and 1, and Yahushua went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahushua said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, that there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. See? So there were not going to be one stone upon another that would not be thrown down, because that was a total destruction of Jerusalem. All right, which is what Yahushua spoke about. Now, when we go from there to Luke 21. All right, so let's go to Luke 21 and verse 20. Yep. Luke 21 and 20. It says, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh, because it spoke about the abomination that maketh desolate. This was totally fulfilled at this time, back in 70 AD, because it was a time of vengeance. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. So if you're away from there, stay away. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. And it was fulfilled in 70 AD. Just as we read in the book of Daniel, the 9th chapter, the 24th verse, it says, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy, because that's when it was totally fulfilled. All right. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, the heathens, unto the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled, meaning unto the time when the Lord said, okay, that's enough. Now it's time to establish my kingdom on earth. Okay? Now, let's go from there to the book of Revelation, chapter 12. And verse 13. It says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child, which is who? The nation of Israel. And the man-child is Yahushai, which brought deliverance. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, which was the woman represents Israel. 2 wings of a great eagle mean a great escape. When we go back to the time of the Egyptian Empire, it used the same terminology. When the Lord delivered us out of the land of Egypt, there was a great deliverance. All right? That she might fly into the wilderness. What is the wilderness? This was the interiors of Africa, because the other places where Jake fled to, the main place that they came and got Israel from, that they brought over here to the Americas, was from the west coast of Africa, from that region. So the wilderness is in Africa, but you had Israel that fled into all different places, up in Europe, among Elam, so-called Asia Minor, wherever they fled to, into her place. Now, what is her place? Her place is America. It says, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. And after that 350 years, which is what this represents, that's when the truth started coming out. And that's when this devil started falling, and that's when Jake started getting cut off from a lot of these benefits. Even though they were still receiving certain things, they were being cut off because the truth was coming out. And now we see the ending of it. It says, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood, which the water as a flood that the serpent cast out, serpent being, in this case, being the Roman military, which is the whole, beast system later on, that was the orders that were given to totally destroy, Jake back then. So it says, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman. And we read about all the different legions and different armies that were set into Jerusalem, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood, because that's what was prophesied that would happen, that the end would be with the flood, and the end thereof shall be what? With the flood. Right? Going back, it says, and the earth helped the woman. And now this is where the other Israelites fled to different parts, of Europe, of Asia Minor, among Elam, among anywhere where Jake was at. That's where they fled to. And some of them fled into the interiors of Africa, because those were the ones that later on were going to be brought over to this side of the world later on in the generations. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Why? Because you had some Israelites that escaped. Not every Israelite was caught up in the siege of Jerusalem. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of the Most High, and have the testimony of Yahushai. And we read about that. How them Roman armies, they were so mad that they just wanted to just tear Jake apart, just destroy Jake completely. All right, let's see what else we got. All right, so that's the main points. Like I said, you can read through this article here, which gives you, insight. You could this article here, which goes into the so-called origin, or the origins, not so-called, the origins of this whole pre-tribulation rapture thing. And that's where it's a tradition that they're saying is going to happen now. There's 7-year tribulation. They don't understand that already took place during the time of the besieging of Jerusalem. All right. So now, with this, because this, these verses here in Daniel 9 chapter is a lot of history, and a lot to remember. So you would have to go over and over and over and over again to be able to, really break it down. But at least now you have somewhat of an idea, because Elder Pastor has gone over this plenty of times, so, but now you're getting more of an idea of what took place. All right, so we know the 70 weeks are 490 years. We know 69 weeks was when Yahushua came on the scene and was crucified. And then the last week was during the time of the sieging of Jerusalem, from about 66 AD to 70 AD and then beyond, because it wasn't until about 74 AD when they took the last stronghold, which was Masada. You know, and they were Jake caught hell back then. So this is totally fulfilled. This last week or this last 7 years is totally fulfilled already. You know, and if you understood history, you would know. And that's why we read about Matthew Henry, who compiled these commentaries from 1708 to 1710, more than 100 years before the pre-tribulation or rapture was popularized. This theology was popularized in the 1830s. That's why he never mentioned anything about some pre-tribulation. You know, and in the future, there's going to be 7 years catching hell, and the believers of the church are going to be raptured into the cloud, and then the people are going to be left here and catch hell and go through. You know, the Antichrist is going to put flames of fire up in their ass, and you know, then they're going to torture them and going to go through this and that and the other. That's hogwash. You know, that's the dogmas, philosophies, and traditions of men. That's exactly what that is. You know. So with that, you know, I pray that you brothers and you few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say shalom.